Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Time to do the show.
Hey, everybody. It is time to do the show. Yeah.
We're sorry to be late. I know many of you are just camping. You're just thinking, do I have time to refill my
right,
coffee?
Exactly. Or they're going to catch us on the ride home from camping.
That could be true.
Yeah. That would be like not a bad thing.
That'd
I love
be a pretty
camping.
short week after Monday, Labor Day, and now we're gone. That's a pretty short week. We do have some dealers out this week.
Yeah.
Anniversaries and this and that. So people getting a little time away. A couple of updates. Shall I get to those? You got any news from around town? Town crier?
No, am I the town crier? I need a bell.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. Hear you here? No, nothing.
Nothing. Okay. A couple things we got on Monday, Tim Evans, who's speaking at NIADA and is the topic at NIADA and with us on Monday will be hiring, like lessons in hiring. Right.
Yeah.
So that'll be good because, a lot of dealers could use some help in that regard. Figuring out how
Tim
to get folks hired.
a dealer. I'm not sure what state. It's Evans Auto Sales.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then, so then we've got on Monday the 10th, the week from Monday, we've got Gordy Tormolin, our outgoing president of the NIADA board and a dealer out of Illinois.
And we should have Jeff Martin sometime before the conference. Haven't quite gotten that nailed down yet.
And I'm in discussions now.
Jeff Martin, who is the NIADA Executive Director, CEO.
Okay. CEO. Yep. And then I'm also talking to Chris Tiller, who's a longtime director, VP. He's the guy at Car Financial. So they've been around a long time. I got a couple of things that we're talking about as potential topics, but look, you're going to want to watch and see when Chris Tiller comes because he has a wealth of knowledge and look forward to chatting with him.
Nice guy. Really like him. Every time we've had him on, because he's worked with us podcasts, different kinds of podcasts. And I think that he came for one of our online events too.
He tried to. And
couldn't
I
remember that he was supposed to.
He was a guest who couldn't make it. But yeah, he's been a part of our Tote the Note stuff. And look forward. It's been a while. Look forward to catching up with Chris.
It has been a while. It's been over a year.
Yeah.
It was before we moved back.
Yeah. So again, we got a couple topics to chat with him about. So we'll see which one we settle on. But watch for that. We'll get that nailed down and let everybody know. But I think that's it. We got V8 deadlines coming up, but stuff only really.
It's June 1st, isn't it? June 1st.
Today is the 31st.
Oh, 31st. Sorry, tomorrow is June 1st.
Right.
It is just crazy how fast the days go by.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to be at in Vegas again in no time,
just
right?
Just
a few weeks. So for those who haven't made those arrangements, you're going to want to be there. We hope to see many of you there.
Yep.
I need to go back and verify the day. I think it's the last day, Thursday, that I am moderating a panel.
We've got a few weeks to start like hyping that up.
Yeah.
Everybody who's listening, come to the panel. Yeah.
And we don't know yet if we're going to have permission to broadcast that one virtually, but we'll just stay tuned.
Well, we've asked.
Right.
And so it just kind of depends on AV and all sorts of stuff like that. So,
Okay. Shall we get to our topic then?
I think that's a great idea.
So, the down payment conversation is an ever going conversation. It's been part of the discussion and Buy Here Pay Here since Buy Here Pay Here was a thing, right? And in our V8 groups throughout the month of May, where we're reviewing April data, it just continues to be the question. Obviously, the thing that you hear me talk about plenty is that down payment, for all intents and purposes, it would seem that down payment is still the primary driver of volume. We talk about kind of the steering wheel or a knob on a wheel to turn a big boat. Like it's how you can move volume. You can always relax down payment requirements and increase volume. You can certainly stunt your volume by running the down payments up. So it is a regulator in a way. And as people talk about that in the context of business model, business strategy, it's just been so interesting to watch how people feel so differently. Just even the discussions inside a group of 8 dealers on a screen virtually, It's like they just feel very differently about down payment. And it's,
and it's all over the board. I mean,
it is.
Some places you don't find an awful lot of places anymore that are around that $500 down kind of thing.
No,
there are still some out there.
Some. And so I think it's not really what you publicize, it's what you agree to with the customer, right? And so there are a lot of factors here. And I think it's one of those conversations that it's hard to talk about the numbers without having people understand the whole scope of these operations, you know, and kind of, because when I think about down payment, and the numbers I brought today are going to be, I did an average down payment across all members. I did an average down payment as a percentage of the selling price of the car, and I did highs and lows too. So when you watch the highs and lows, you can see, man, they're just all over the place in terms of how they do business. Is one of them better than the other? Tell that to the dealer who says that their numbers are different.
Yeah.
And it's like, who gets to decide what's right for you or what's right for me?
And it depends on your business model. And we've seen some dealers very successful having higher ACV, higher down payment. And we've seen other dealers very successful, lower ACV, lower payment.
Yeah, some of them with a higher ACV and a lower payment,
lower
down payment. So it's
like it really is all over the board.
It's so, and I think we had one particular conversation where a dealer, was kind of adamant that they, were going to hold out for more down payment. They kind of had to make their business model work. And so the question came up, do you think down payment is a predictor of success, sort of, like ask one dealer, well, how do you feel after 12 years? This was a 12-year dealer, I remember. And after 12 years of doing this, do you feel like that you need more down payment for success on the loan? And they were like, absolutely not. Like we have the same amount of success with the low down payment customers we do with the higher down payment customers. So it really sparked a lot of interesting thoughts. Besides what was actually said, people started thinking, well, should I revisit this? Because anytime we talk about down payment, it's important to remember that there are two different kind of things to think about here. One is the success of the loan. Will a customer who gives more down payment be more successful on their loan? So there's
a lot of really, really across the board opinions about that too. And you want to list these, and then I can add my comment to that?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. And then the other one, and I just am always mindful, is like, you can talk about this stuff philosophically and decide whether, if I got more down payments, would my loans perform better? Philosophically, you can discuss that and decide what makes more sense strategy-wise. But from a pure mathematics standpoint, like from a cash management standpoint, some dealers need to get a certain amount of down payment in order to make the math work. And because they can't, like I said in one of our meetings last night, you can't make the exception day after day without emptying your bank accounts.
Yeah.
So, people have to kind of strike that balance, and everybody's in a different capital position.
Yeah. And, you hear like our friends at Neo, one of the things that they've been tracking, and what they lean very heavily on, is that down payments are not an indicator of loan success. And, and from my perspective, I have not been a dealer. I've talked to a lot. You have been a dealer. That it seems that it's more about, and Tommy Brandis would be like, yes, it's more about your collection practices. And it's also about how much do you need to keep your machine moving forward.
Yeah. And I couldn't help but think, and by the way, you mentioned the underwriting that suggests that, down payments are not the predictor. So we've been doing with our clients, we've been going inside their history. The ones that have, years worth of data history, enough to have, multiple pools of closed loans. And I can tell you, with one of the ones we did recently, larger down payments were absolutely an indicator of more success.
Really?
Now, not by big margins, like, we bucketed different percentages of selling price, and it just showed that definitely more down payment translated into more success.
You know what I love? Well, besides you.
Yeah.
I love that as we really start to look at data, I mean, we're getting our own data points and things like that. And as we're really looking at data, there's certain questions that we're asking. And it's interesting to me that, we're collecting enough data that we can, based on this is what we're seeing. And that, there's so much out there that says, no, this works, no, this works, no, this works, no, this works. And, we've had the conversation about other topics that sometimes that's just like your gut, or, this is how I feel like it works best. And I love getting more and more actual data that shows how does this perform. And but it is still going to be like, based on this business model, this works. It works.
Yeah.
They have high success, but it's just interesting as we can collect more and more data, is we can take a look and see, is that the same with other business models too?
Yeah. And I think, it is nice to be having the data come in. I think having larger pools of data to be able to, that is fresh data. Like today, we're talking about April data just because we have not yet closed May. And so we don't yet have the May numbers in. But that's still pretty fresh. I mean, we're looking at, last month's numbers, post tax refund season, by all accounts. April would be getting past it. And so you're going to hear some numbers today that are, I think the other thing that's tricky, like for me, I like to be super transparent about the data that we share. However, we have a privacy, thing with our clients, or with the V8 members rather. And so we can't share who's who here. I'm just going to give some numbers in a kind of an aggregated, some average numbers, and then some highs and lows, as I said. So you want to share the screen and we can show the numbers that, let me get this kind of ready.
Right here, add to stage.
There you go.
Right there.
So let's first look at, again, I'll just remind, this data is coming only from our V8 dealer groups, and it's all groups brought together in this particular data pool. And then the average down payment at delivery in the month of April came out to $1,715.
And is this based on how many dealers?
About 30, I think, okay. About the number. And then so you've got, it's better information than asking a couple of guys at the car auction. You know what I mean? It's still a small pool relative to the larger industry.
Yeah.
But it's better than, you've got some dealers out there who are just they don't have good sources of comparative data if they're not in a 20 group. And so it's just an example of, kind of what can matter there. But now let's look at down payment. This is, by the way, all these numbers that we're going to talk about are just down payment at delivery. We don't factor in any deferred down payments. We just treat those like they're
what they come to the dealership with.
Right. At the time of delivery. So down payment as a percentage of selling price, the low in the group was 7.5. And then the average came in at 12.6 across our dealer groups, which that's pretty consistent. I'm always telling dealers, we want to try to ask for 15%. People can ask for more than that. So why don't we pause here a minute and talk about, for example, how would you arrive at how much to ask for? Well, we've done this. We've done podcasts in the past about down payment and techniques for asking for down payment. And I think the first thing I would say is that I would ask for plenty. The question is, when you start the conversation about down payment, if I start chatting with somebody online who's asking me about a down payment and I ask them for 20% down, they'll probably never come to the building. So, it's like that's the tricky part, is how do you have those conversations through social media, through chat threads?
And haven't we seen that, most people, when they're having a conversation via social media or the phone, are going to say less. Yeah. Most people do. They say less than what they actually have.
Yeah.
Because it's a negotiating thing, and they're going to try to save as much as they can and keep it in their pocket than have to spend on it. So, I hear from different people that we work with that do BDC and all of that they may say, yeah, it was approved at $500 down. And when they get there, it's up to the salespeople to see, all right, what really is what we can get for a down payment.
Yeah. And as we talk about that, I'm reminded that, and we're in an age where technology is shifting, right? We're getting more and more technology and artificial intelligence and the ability to chat with people and chat bots. But I'm reminded here that this is where I think the human element is still going to be relevant. I think this is where we got to kind of keep having these conversations, because if you're a customer who's hoping to buy a car with 500 down, and I want to ask you for more down payment than that, I think that conversation is so much better done in person, face to face, look you in the eye.
Yeah.
If you're the customer and you come to us, Michelle, and you say, I'm hoping to buy a car today with 500 down, then I said, well, let's see what we can do. And let's go to the desk and we'll work up all the stuff. And you may or may not have an application in yet, but I certainly want you to drive the car and really like it. And now when we sit together and I look you in the eye and say, Michelle, I know you were counting on buying a car with 500 down today, and we may be able to get that done. Let me ask you though, we typically would like to see customers do around 20% down, and that car that you've chosen is this. So that 20% would be this number. Are you in a position to do that? Because obviously, if you can do more down payment, it's going to help you, one, with approval. It's going to definitely increase the chance of me being able to send you home in the car today. It's going to potentially lower the payments for you. Certainly going to save you some interest if you can do some more down payment. So obviously, I'm looking you in the eye. I'm not flinching one bit. I'm saying this is why more down payment is in your best interest, Mr. or Mrs. Customer.
How do you feel about, because this is something that I've, when I hear, $500 is not going to do the thing. What if a dealer has one or two cars on his lot that would work with? I mean, so something that's a lot less expensive. So if someone comes in at 500, it's like, we can absolutely get you in these two or whatever. If you want to look at some of the others, we will have to talk about down payment.
I think you can absolutely do that. I think what the difference is really technique. Is like for me, it's always my approach to try to help the customer buy the car that they want to buy. Now, we also know that if we allow them to, customers with the low down payment will come in and choose the most expensive car on the lot, and that's difficult then for us to work with. So what you're touching on is some of the stuff, and we really should probably make this a topic going forward, because the idea that down payment is one of the things to negotiate with a customer, and how to help them land on a car and help them choose a car that works well for them. We hear dealers that say, in your credit situation, because most dealers we're finding prefer to do an app first and then help the customer choose a car. And it just is not an environment that I would want to work in, where I said, we've looked at your credit and you're approved for one of these two cars. Like, this is it. This is what you get. Because I like my chances better as a salesperson of working with the customer and say, I know you really like that blue, whatever, can we work on down payments? Is there somebody that might be able to help you with some more down payment? Have you got, a family member who might be able to help? Have you got someone
that owes you money? Yeah.
This and that is like, we got something we can sell on,
Yeah. I mean, we've even offered the tactic of, do you have a car that you could trade in, even if it's, if is it sitting in your driveway, needs a tow truck? Okay, we can do that. And or whatever it is, because but just asking for some way of being able to increase that in a way that, it might be a solve a problem. Like, the car is sitting in Aunt Joni's driveway, has been for a year. It's like, we can get rid of that for you. And that's, give you an extra $300 or whatever for the car.
Yeah. And I think one time, obviously with our V8 groups, that thing just started in January. So we've got data. We did some beta stuff back in the close of last year. So with those particular dealers, we're barely getting 5 months worth of data. Most of them are more like 3 or 4.
But there are a few that we've got years.
Yeah, with our clients, not the V8 dealers, but the so I think that when I look at these numbers, because I would ask dealers again, if you're just listening from your car or whatever, then know that the numbers, again, the low is 7.5%. The average was 12.6%, and the high was 18.7. So when you look at that 7.5 to 18,
so most people aren't even doing 20%. When you say we need to do 20%, most people
price.
Are not asking for that, because that's the high.
They sure won't get 18.7 unless they ask for it. So this is where it really boils down to. This is where you start getting into technique and training.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is why when I look at these kind of numbers, I think people would say, well, what's the real difference? Well, some of it's business strategy, underwriting and business strategy. Some of it's capitalization. Obviously, some dealers just can't afford to do. They can't. The math just doesn't work for them. The deal structure's got to fit a certain thing with their lender or whatever. Then that can kind of paint you into a box. But I would say in almost any scenario, training should we should work on training to help us get more commitment from the customer. Almost any dealer you ask would say there's almost always money on the table. We just got to learn to ask for it better. And I think the techniques that I'm really talking about is I would not be afraid to ask for down payment. I would ask for 50% down payment. Why? Because it's good for the customer. I'm not trying to scare them.
Yeah, but
I'm not asking them to do anything that wouldn't be to their benefit.
It is. And you don't want to paint them in a corner. So like you're asking for more down payment. Rent is due in 2 days.
That's right.
And, it's like because we really are in this industry also financial advisors in a way where it's like, okay, how much are you paying for rent? And that we're walking them through like, this is what we see a budget should look like. And this is what this is the kind of payment that looks like you would be able to comfortably pay.
Yeah. And I think, and we do have one more batch of numbers here to share, but before we get to that, I want to talk about this idea that, when we talk about dealers who their volume is off, because we're hearing a lot of dealers, and you see it on social media, people are saying, man, our month of May has been really slow, or it's been feast or famine.
I see that. And then I see other people pipe it in. It's like it is every May, or it's like it, it's like we're doing fine. So
Well, again, that's why you got to go get the numbers, and you got to look at the numbers and see what people did. So you can say, well, man, I just barely got $600 average down payment in May. Well, other dealers, dozens of dealers across lots of states. This represents many states.
This is from April. Yeah.
And they got $17 or $15. So it's like, it's just a point of reference. That's just all I'm trying to share here today.
Which is like, helpful especially for some of the newer dealers. It's like, okay, out there, the average of 30 plus dealers all across the US is X.
Right. So I think this is why we want to see that we want to talk about specific numbers, and then we have to recognize in there when volume is off. My question to the dealers would be, well, can you afford to relax your down payments a little bit? Can you afford to be more flexible with down payments? Because that typically would allow you to approve more customers, right? And so I'm always super watchful of that. But I think the thing to really connect here going forward, as we accumulate more and more data, we're able to talk more intelligently, very specifically about success. It's like, but does that dealer who gets 18.7%, for example, do their loans perform better?
True.
Right? This is the part that we really need to know, is like, today at the time of delivery, it's a cash management question. Over time, we need to know, is that really producing more for them? Is that dealer, how much better? It would be interesting to know how much better is that portfolio performing versus the dealer that got 7.5%.
And the wild card is your collection practices,
and
obviously, and your underwriting,
your loan closing. So,
and I think that it's worth pointing out with this, of the dealers that we're drawing these numbers from, they are from brand new to very seasoned large portfolios. And when Jim and I were looking at some of these numbers, because he gets all excited and wants to share. And I'm like, it is pretty cool. Down payments all across the board. It's like, it's even the seasoned dealers have that kind of spread. And then the younger ones have that kind of spread. So down payments, it's like, even when you look at those that have like a huge portfolio, they're still right around that 12%.
Our portfolios, or our pool of dealers right now, ranges, like you said, from brand new up to, I think the largest dealer's portfolio is around 25 million. So, that's roughly the range of people we're talking about here. But you're right. I mean, those things vary. And we had a dealer on our podcast a while back that we weren't talking about down payment, but they related something, because I asked the question. My memory of your business is that you really, he was the dealer that I credited with saying, you shared with me sometime that you sort of look past the down payment. And he didn't remember. I had to kind of refresh his memory about the conversation. And he said, yeah, we actually don't get a down payment. And here's a guy with multiple locations, mega $1 million portfolio. Now,
they don't collect any down payment. They don't ask for any down payment.
For a down payment. I mean, I don't know if he means that they only cover taxes or whatever. I don't, but the point is, he gets almost no down payment. They do lots of business, and he's been in business for decades. So there's something to think about here. Like, I think it's easy to say that I'll agree to less down payment when I'm a very healthy business and I've got plenty of positive cash flow and I can afford financially to take that risk. I can afford to do less down payment.
Because most of your younger dealers, I mean, as you're building up a portfolio, you can sell out your lot and not have money to be able to buy another car pretty quickly.
That's right.
So that's part of what the down payment does, is to be able to give you the money to buy another car.
That's why I say it's kind of two different conversations. One of them is cash management. One is likelihood of loan success, like in the deal structure and the likelihood of loan success. And I think they're different conversations. And some dealers, it's one of the things you see in our groups is that strategy varies based on those factors, primarily. And so this is all just part of the things. Like, we want to just study the numbers and be able to say, look, here's what dealers are getting. And then, like I say, as we move forward, we'll be able to have dealers in the same group say, how come you get 17% and you only get 5%, whatever. You have those conversations.
Yeah. And it's really, we love being able to bring this kind of information to the morning show, but, and part of the beauty of one of the V8 groups is that it's this compare and connect, that you've got dealers that are talking about the stuff. And it's like, it's off of real data. These are the real things. And it's just funny. I knew to buy here, pay here. And it's when you get a group of dealers together, everyone feels like their model is right and correct, and everyone should be doing X. And it's just an interesting conversation to watch that. And so in the V8, it's like, these are the numbers, and this is how your portfolio is performing, and this is and so it just kind of it becomes less of it becomes more leaning into data instead of, well, it's always worked for me. And so it's going to work for everybody else, kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's a lot less guesswork. Like, one of the things one of the things we're doing in V8 is the data that we're talking about here is validated. What I mean by that is the dealers are either giving us access to their DMS so we can get in and spot check and verify the numbers of the reporting. If they look out of whack or whatever, we're able to get in and spot check those. And then, or they send us the source reports that they use to prepare the numbers. So it's a way for us to have some sort of method of verification. It'd be some time before the DMS providers would create these reports for us if they ever did. And so it's like, how do we make sure that the information that we're getting is sourced directly and not just the dealer making up numbers to making them feel
and
better.
that's been, I would say probably about 30% of our dealers in V8 are in a 20 group as well.
Right.
And we had the question when we said we want you to verify. It's like, why? We've never had to do that before. And it's like, because it's just a little bit different. We're doing this a little bit different than before. So there had to be that explanation about this is why. And it's funny because when I talk to dealers that I've met and know and have gotten to know a little bit, and they talk sometimes about, well, sometimes the data is like a little bit fluffy. It's been inflated or it's been deflated or somehow
you mean in 20 groups?
In a 20 group. Yeah.
And I don't know if they know, because they don't know.
Yeah.
But they're guessing. I mean, I think it's look, the 20 groups are going to do things the way they do things. Like for this, there's methodologies.
Yes.
But I think the what I'm really trying to say over here is that we're trying to make sure that the numbers that we have are clean. Are they perfect? No, we're working on it. We've got dealers still struggling to figure out how to do this stuff.
I've loved watching you as new people come in and they're struggling to get their numbers in. And the numbers, it's a pretty, like 30 data points, something around there. But being able to get the clean number is something that I just have really appreciated watching you say, hey, let's just jump on a call and we'll walk you through and show you how to do the thing. And, so that we're making sure that we're getting really clean. Cause when Jim goes through and looks at all the data and is going through and checking stuff, it's frequently, especially with the newer dealers, that there's something really off, or that you have to go in and it's like, all right, so that's not the right place we're pulling or whatever.
Data entry. They're putting the number in the wrong box or whatever. So that stuff can happen. So, it's just a way for us to spot check and verify. We've moved to a form where the numbers are month over month so that the dealer themselves can see if this number is dramatically different than what their numbers normally look like. They can see it right there in the form. But I think we're trying to make ourselves available to help the dealers walk through this. And, we've got dealers that are very inexperienced. They don't know what you mean by certain terminology. They have to have, a little hand holding on some of that stuff, and that's okay. We want to help them learn and make sure that their numbers are comparable to the others. And look, different softwares, different business practices, different, whatever strategies. So these numbers are still
it's always a challenge to try to bring people with different business models, different softwares, and all onto the same apples to apples.
It is. It's a challenge. It's definitely one of the things that is, one of my chief roles, and the reason I'm going to stay so involved throughout 2024 and directly, moderating these and touching the numbers and making sure, because we've just got to make sure we get the process down. And I've persisted with our dealers to say, I know. No data with verification, no meeting access. Like I gotta do that, because I'm really committed to preserving the integrity of what we're doing there. And so when we come and talk about numbers, I don't want to add to any confusion or misinformation for dealers out there. One of the things we're doing for the podcast, the reason we show up free 3 times a week, is because we want to get good information to dealers so that they can make better decisions about their business.
Yes.
And so we're just making it available, right? And so this is in pieces. I mean, at least in little bits they can get it. So this last number is something that dealers actually asked for in one of our meetings. It's not a number that I'm used to looking at. Is down payment as a percentage of cost. So they're just, you think about, we most of us track a cash and deal number. So for those not familiar, cash and deal in the simplest form would be, if you have an $8,000 unit cost and you get $2,000 down, rough numbers, then you're at $6,000 cash and deal. Well, what this does is it measures the down payment as a percentage of cost instead of looking at it as a cash and deal number. And so those numbers were
talk about cost.
Inventory cost is going to be, we don't include pack in the number. So you've just got the purchase price of the car plus reconditioning. That's it. We don't put any of the aftermarket add-ons, like if you got a warranty in there, any of that kind of stuff. We don't put those numbers in there. So this is just going to be the inventory cost of the vehicle with reconditioning. So that's why I say just cost with recon. So basically purchase price plus recon.
So this number, because you have the one that's down at delivery, percentage of selling price. This one is, this to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, this shows how well they're buying cars too. This number about the inventory cost, because if they're covering, at the high end 31% with the down payment, then they've kept their inventory recon in certain bounds or boundaries, and they've got a lot of they're buying and their recon dialed. That's what that says to me.
That could probably be true. I mean, I think that's generally could be a conclusion. I think the reality is some dealers are just going to be better getting down payment. I mean, they may have, if you look at the average and the high, the difference in the 21% and the 31% could just be, maybe they both have the same amount of cost,
it would be
but they're better asking for down payment.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see those that are in the high on one, are they on the high on the other too?
Oh, yeah.
Because it could be just completely, and that's kind of the stuff that you guys talk about too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just because those dealers have a higher cost, their markups could be different. We've been talking about gross profit and how much is the right number, and term of loan, and all this stuff comes into play. So that's what I say, this is just one piece of data, but if we just keep it on down payment for right now and just think, if we just are trying to figure out what are dealers doing in terms of down payment, and what can they know that can help them? For today, what you can know is that our groups average $1,700 down in the month of April.
And that was about 20%.
That was about 20% of the cost of the vehicle across all dealers. Again, cost could vary, down payments could vary. So these are just averages. So, we don't do benchmarks with V8. We're just focusing on averages. And so this is kind of why I focus on that for today, especially people trying to listen in the car. It's like, just trying to understand what's typical. So, that kind of wraps up what I had in mind to share for.
I wanted to shout out. I posted it before. Gene, I hope you got your power and internet back.
He must have.
Yeah.
Right.
He was able to. Yeah.
He must have. So. the morning show, you'd like to think that we break the internet, but we've never broken power.
We've never broken power.
Yeah.
Or the internet.
Yeah.
Or the internet.
Yeah.
So anything else?
No, I don't think so. Just
moral of the story?
The moral of the story is we're about to close the month of May. And I think as people, I've
we'll talk about this again in May when we get the numbers in.
See how those numbers compare month over month. But I think one of the things I've traditionally shared, this is very general, but you have your peaks and valleys in buy here, pay here. Generally speaking, I would say November and December are traditionally slower, not for everybody, but across the industry, probably slower. And then January is a little bit unpredictable now with tax refunds kind of shifting the way they are. But then, February and March are typically the peak of your tax refund season. That means April through October is generally pretty consistent. It's pretty much there's no season there.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think dealers we can learn a lot through this stretch of April through October. We just got to watch the numbers and see what we're learning.
I love it. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy Friday. We've got a short weekend. We don't have one of these long holiday weekends. It's a regular weekend. Yeah. Go camping. Go spend some time outside because the weather everywhere is just improving. And we just...
I think I will. See ya.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining. We really do appreciate your support. And if you guys have a topic you want to hear, feel free to reach out. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.